A very good evening to all. It's time for Children's Bedtime Treasury with Let Emotion Speak. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe to my channel for more bedtime stories each night. Today's story is about the toys that ran away. "Put your toys away, Lucy," said Lucy's mother from the kitchen. "It's time to get ready for bed." Lucy gave a great big sigh. "Do I really have to?" she asked, knowing fully well what the answer was going to be. "Yes, of course you do," said her mother. "You shouldn't have to be told each time to put your toys away. You really don't look after them properly." It was true. Lucy never had been very good at looking after her toys. Once she left a beautiful new doll outside in her pram, and she had become ruined after it rained. Then she had carelessly dropped her tea set on the floor, and some of the cups had broken. And she was forever just pushing all her toys back in the cupboard in a hurry, instead of putting them away carefully. Worse still, when she was in a temper, she would throw her toys, and sometimes she would even kick them. Tonight, Lucy was in another of her can't be bothered moods. She grabbed a handful of toys and threw them into the cupboard. In first went some dolls, which all landed on their heads and then fell in a heap. Next, Lucy threw in the little tables and chairs from the doll's house. They landed with a bounce and came to a stop in the corner. Without even looking behind her, Lucy then picked up some puzzles and a skipping rope and tossed them into the cupboard too. They landed with a crash on the floor of the cupboard as well. "That's that," said Lucy. She closed the cupboard door, squashing the toys even more, and went into the bathroom to have her bath. Inside the toy cupboard, Teddy, one of the toys, spoke. "I'm not going to stay here for a moment longer," he said. "Nor me," said Katie, the rag doll. "If we aren't going to be loved, we aren't staying either," chimed the doll's house furniture. "I want to be somewhere where I'm not thrown around," said one of the puzzles. "So do we," said the rollerblades. One after another, all the toys agreed that they weren't going to stay. They decided they would all go back to Toyland and wait to be given to some children who would love them more. The next morning, Lucy decided that she would play with her skipping rope. When she opened the toy cupboard, she couldn't believe her eyes. All the toys had vanished. The shelves were completely empty. At first, Lucy thought her mother had moved them, but her mother said she hadn't. "I expect you've put them somewhere yourself, Lucy, and can't remember where you've left them," said her mother, not very helpfully. All day Lucy searched high and low for her missing toys, but they were nowhere to be found. She went to bed in tears that night, wondering if she would ever be able to play with the toys again. She was already missing them terribly. That night, Lucy was suddenly woken by a noise in her bedroom. Was she seeing things? Or was that a little fairy at the bottom of her bed? "Who are you?" asked Lucy. "I am the special messenger from Toyland," replied the fairy. "I have been sent to tell you that all your toys have run away back to the Toyland because you treated them badly." "Oh, I do miss my toys so much," cried Lucy. "Well, if you really do, then you had better come and tell them yourself," said the fairy. With that, the fairy floated over to Lucy and took her hand. The fairy then beat her wings so fast that they became a blur. At the same time, Lucy felt herself being lifted from the bed. Out of Lucy's bedroom window they both flew, across fields and forests, until it became too misty for Lucy to see anything at all. Suddenly they were floating down to the ground. The mist lifted, and Lucy found herself in the grounds of a huge fairy tale castle with tall pointed turrets and warm yellow lights twinkling from the windows. "This is Toyland Castle," exclaimed the fairy, as she led Lucy to a large red door. The fairy knocked on the door. "Do enter, please," said a voice. Lucy found herself in a large cozy room with a huge log fire. Sitting in the corner was a kindly looking old man, wearing a carpenter's apron and holding a broken wooden doll. "Hello," he said. "You've come to ask your toys to return, haven't you?" "Well, yes," said Lucy, not really quite knowing what to say to the little man. "It's up to them to decide, of course," said the little man. "They only come back here if they are mistreated. If they are broken, I repair them, and then they go to the other children who love them more." "But I do love my toys," wept Lucy. "Then come and tell them yourself," smiled the little man. He led Lucy into another room, and there, to her surprise, were all her toys. Not only that, but they were all shiny and new again. Nothing was broken or chipped or scratched. Lucy ran up to her toys. "Please, toys, please, please come home again. I really do love you and miss you, and I promise I shall never mistreat you again," she cried. She picked up Teddy and gave him a big hug. Then she did the same thing to all the other toys. "Well, it's up to the toys now," said the little man. "You must go back home again with the fairy messenger and hope that they will give you another chance." With that, the fairy messenger took Lucy's hand, and soon they were floating over her own garden again and through her bedroom window. Lucy was so tired she didn't even remember falling asleep when she got into bed. In the morning she awoke, still rather sleepy, and rushed to the toy cupboard. There, neatly lined up on the shelves, were all her toys. Lucy was so overjoyed. From that day on, she always treated her toys well and took great care of them. Lucy never was quite sure whether the whole thing was a dream or not, but it certainly did the trick, whatever it was. There was one thing that really puzzled her though. If it had been just a dream, why were all the toys so shiny and new again? So I hope, kids, you got the message from this story. You must treat your toys well. It's time to say goodbye and good night.